Hello and welcome back to Monster Monday. On today's episode, I'm going to share a mythological, folklorical creature that you could use in your fantasy games. It is the Headless Men. Okay guys, so I'm drawing this from the Castles and Crusades Monsters and Treasure book. This is not something that I found in any of the editions of D&D, which I find curious because these creatures known in Castles and Crusades as the Acephali are the mythological headless men. Now before I go into stat blocks and how you could use these in your campaigns, I wanted to share just from Wikipedia what I found about the headless men. Various species of mythical headless men were rumored in antiquity and later to inhabit remote parts of the world. They are variously known as the Acephali, that's the Greek, the Blemmies, which is the Latin, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. But in both of these cases, and in other cultures where these are mythological creatures are found, they are humanoids, effectively without a head, whose eyes and mouths and facial features appear on their chest. Now, there's some variations. In some of these, it's a gaping, monstrous mouth in their chest with eyes on their shoulders. In others, it's depicted as, literally like eyes, nose, mouth, like by the tummy. The interesting thing is that these are mythical creatures from our own world. So I was surprised when I couldn't really find them in D&D. And if you know of a D&D edition or book or companion that has these, please let me know in the comments. But in a quick search, I couldn't really find these anywhere. So I was pleasantly surprised when I was flipping through the Castles and Crusades Monsters and Treasure book that I found these right off the bat because the alphabet. In CNC, the Acephali are described as follows. There are many stories of headless men that allegedly dwell beyond the known world. They are essentially the same, although what they do will vary, as some are cannibals and others are considered heretics. These peoples possess no heads on their shoulders, but instead have their faces on their chest and shoulders. Otherwise, they look like normal men and speak the languages of men. They live in small bands on the fringes of civilization. They're like men in all the other respects. Some are evil, others are good. Most are indifferent to the struggles of good and evil, focused rather on their own misery and the lives they can carve for themselves from the wilds they call home. They have no real organization to their bands. They carry weapons into battle, however, due to their nature, they rarely have body armor on. They do use shields. These strange peoples have weird customs, and the stranger the better, to better alienate those who encounter them. In combat, the Acephali generally would be armed as any primitive peoples, with spears, javelins, knives, and minor weaponry, rarely the armaments of the elite or an advanced people. There could be exceptions or more advanced Acephali tribes that might be encountered, in which case the land traveled and adventure would be different and involving matters with higher stakes. Now, the stat blocks are built for Castles and Crusades, but I have pleasantly discovered that CNC is a game system that is very compatible and easily convertible. So whether you're playing 1st edition AD&D, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, or 5th edition, you could probably modify these stats and use them in whatever game system you're running. In this stat block, they're listed as medium-sized creature with a hit dice of 3. That's like 3d6, but you can upscale or downscale that based on what you need for your particular encounter, adventure, or campaign. They have an AC of 14, a movement speed of 20. You can modify that. You can make them faster or slower, your choice. No special, weapons or attacks. Pretty much humanoid, in terms of alignment and intelligence. So a very flexible encounter, right? At the most basic level, let's think about how you can use Acephali or Acephali in your adventures and encounters. So let's start off with a low-level encounter, right? Your party is traveling through the wilds of some perhaps unknown distant land, or maybe they've gone island hopping, and they were on a ship and the ship crashed, or maybe the ship just, dropped anchor and a party went out to explore this mysterious new island. You could begin to reveal like ruins of some kind of unknown or ancient civilization, but yet no people occupying these ruins. And then little clues, maybe statues, like very worn away stone statues that are like look like humanoids, but they're missing heads. These are like little clues that you could drop in the mystery portion of this part of the encounter and adventure. The party might think that, the missing heads is something, based on erosion, or just, maybe the faces of the statues were removed, the heads were removed because of, blasphemy or heresy or whatever, right? You don't straight away drop what these things are. Then, as the party delves further in, maybe they find or they encounter their first actual Acephali, right? Maybe it's a small patrol, 2 to 3 of the Acephali. And the Acephali are watching the party and waiting to see what the party do, before interacting with them. Or maybe you just decide to go full-blown aggressive, and you have the Acephali, shooting bows, or throwing spears, darts, whatever it is. Maybe if it's like a slightly higher level party, like a mid-level party, maybe those are poisoned spears, poisoned darts, poison-tipped arrows, that kind of stuff, if you want to give them a little more challenge there. But ultimately, you pick a number of Acephali equal to the party size, and then the first encounter happens, right? And remember that the Acephali are not monsters. They have brains, they have logic, they could think. So perhaps if they're being outnumbered, perhaps if the party's doing really well, one of the Acephali runs away to warn the others of the tribe. Now the party might follow them immediately, or might later try to track where that person went, which leads to part 2 of this adventure, right? So the initial encounter, whether it's a short combat, or whether if you're playing like 5e and you have people's passive perception, you make a roll for the Acephali's stealth, and then you decide, like, does anyone in the party have a high enough passive perception to notice the Acephali on the fringes of this ruined area watching the party? Or maybe somebody in the party is clever and they say, like, I'm being very alert, I'm looking around. Then you have them make their perception roll. Regardless of how the encounter unfolds, whether it's aggressive, that's one take, right? You could also have a non-aggressive encounter as the first encounter with the Acephali. Maybe a couple of the Acephali are watching the party moving through the ruins. The Acephali kind of emerge, or maybe 1 or 2 of them emerge while others are hiding, waiting to see what the outcome's going to be. And then the party may act in a social interaction way, in a diplomatic way, and try to talk with the Acephali and try to understand more about them. Now, here's where things could get interesting. You could, at the most basic level, have the Acephali speak the common tongue of these people, of the party. Or you could change things up and make them have their own native language, and they are not familiar with the common tongue or any of the commonly held languages, let's say, that most parties would have: Elvish, Draconish, Dwarvish, all that stuff. I think that it's cool when you have humanoids who don't speak the same language, because then you have to engage in role-playing, right? So maybe the Acephali don't speak any of those languages, and the party's trying to be social and non-combative, but now they have to pantomime and they have to try to use words and show things and draw things, right? That simple little interaction with these primitive Acephali could make for a wonderful scene in this adventure, right? And again, as the GM, you're listening and interacting, and you're also personifying these Acephali, right? So you also will have to come up with some fake languages. Now, God gave me a gift. I can make up fake languages like that, right? Now, you don't have to be that serious. You could just do like Uga Buga, Magangagu, Ba, Shemineba, Ubadu. Just make like syllables, whatever it is. Or you could script out some things if that helps you. But the point is that if they continue to engage socially in a non-threatening way, maybe the other Acephali will emerge after they've been watching these interactions for a couple minutes. Now the party might be surrounded by Acephali, outnumbered by them, so they continue to be diplomatic and social and non-threatening. What happens next is up to you. Do you want to have the Acephali welcome the party to their civilization? You could. Maybe this group of Acephali brings the party back to this area on the island or wherever your setting is, And, it's kind of an open area surrounded by trees or rocks or even hills, foothills, whatever. And maybe the Acephali have this cool whistle, and maybe you could even use this as a prop. You can go on Amazon and order one of those, what are they called? Aztec death whistles. They're like $20 and they make a cool screaming, terrifying sound, right? I like to think of things like that. So you could do something like that, right? And then the whole tribe comes out, and I'm talking like hundreds of them, men, women, children, elders, all that stuff. And maybe the chieftain and the shaman come out and they meet with the party. So again, this could go from a simple encounter that's non-combative at all into encountering the tribe. And maybe they befriend the tribe, right, through more of these interactions and pantomimes. Or you can make it a little easier on yourself and say that perhaps the shaman has a ritual for speaking languages. Like maybe the shaman has tongues or comprehend languages, something like that will allow, or somebody in the party does that, right? So you could have some magical solutions to the language barrier, which is fine. In fact, reward your players if they're that creative. If one of your players is a spellcaster or a magic user who chose to actually take tongues or comprehend languages, they should be rewarded. That's a useful slot that they spent. But that might overcome the language barrier. What's next then, Bill? Here's what you do. Now you create another layer of complexity. This is what turns it from a simple encounter into a whole adventure that's intertwined with the Acephali, right? Maybe the Acephali are going to appeal to the party for their help. Okay. Maybe there is another faction, non-Acephali, some other faction of humanoids or even some monster on the island that is threatening the livelihoods and lives and existence of the Acephali. And the Acephali need the party's assistance with defeating these enemies. Or if you prefer to make it more of an exploration kind of theme, maybe there's something hidden in the mountains that the Acephali need that's crucial to their survival, their people's survival. I like to think of primordial things, right? So maybe the lava stone of blah, 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 right? Come up with something cool that these people need that is like essentially a magical item or artifact that, provides whatever, fresh water or warmth or protection from the outside world. Maybe it's like an ultra magical thing that creates like a reality bubble around the island so that the Acephali aren't threatened by outsiders. But for whatever reason, which again you come up with, this object is in a place where the Acephali have not been able to acquire it. So they've struggled. They've tried to send people to acquire it, and they haven't been able to. So maybe, just maybe, you have a situation where they have asked the party for assistance with this. And if the party agrees, then the shaman will send 2 of their scouts to guide them to the wherever the location is. You can decide. It could be the Blighted Beach, right? Or the Black Grotto. I'm just coming up with things literally off the top of my head. Or the Haunted Hills. You come up with something on the island, a location. And that then becomes part 3, right? So initial encounter in the ruins. Part 2 is like meeting the tribe and negotiating with the tribe and learning about them more and revealing more about their civilization and culture. Part 3 then becomes going to get the important thing. And that is effectively it's your dungeon crawl. Whether it's below ground or above ground, you construct it in a way where there's a series of 4 to 5 challenges, or more if you want it to be a longer situation. Maybe on the way there, the first vestiges of the evil or oppression on the island attack the party. And again, low level, mid level, high level, it doesn't really matter how you want to run this. You just find some appropriate challenge rating monsters to attack, right? So maybe just again, off the top of my head, maybe some ankhegs, some other large insectoid creatures that aren't really part of any faction, but they happen to be in this kind of area, right? Or maybe you go with good old-fashioned undead, some skeletons, some zombies, or upscale it to some wights or ghosts. Any of those would be fine, right? As the party's trying to get to the place that they're trying to get to, have those kind of perilous encounters happen. Or for non-combat based challenges, things like quicksand, or sentient fungi, plants, or vines that just attack and make difficult terrain, and maybe, if it's mid to higher level, some poison factors or something else that makes getting through this area perilous, right? There has to be a reason why the Acephali themselves have not been able to go get their magical totem or whatever their thing is, right? So the party gets through that. And then the next part is they get to the location. Now here's where you could get some really cool inspiration from exploration type fiction, whether it's books or movies or TV shows. I'm just going to throw out movies because the reference that I'm about to make will easily be something that everyone knows, right? Just think of Indiana Jones. Any of the Indiana Jones movies, there's always some scene where Indiana Jones is like exploring and trying to get some item of antiquity, right? And there's obstacles, and there's pits, or there's darts, traps, that kind of stuff. So you begin to construct your ideas just by listing out ideas, influences from other things, okay? So there should be some terrain-based challenges and obstacles. That's an easy thing to throw into virtually any setting: jungle, desert, mountains and rocks and hills, caves, caverns, that kind of stuff, ruins, always options there. Then you sprinkle in some relatively easy monstrous encounters. And again, those monsters, whether they're undead or ankegs, shouldn't even be part of like the faction that is actually opposing and oppressing the Acephali. Then once you get into the meat and potatoes and the party has overcome some of those encounters and they've overcome some of those lower level challenge combat encounters, then you start to step it up gradually, right? And maybe the first introduction of that is this opposing faction, who again, I don't think I would have it be a different tribe of Acephali. I think it would have to be some other kind of sentient, maybe humanoid opposition on the island. What that is totally up to you. It could be lizard men. It could be dragonborn, at the most basic level. It could be kobolds or goblins or orcs, but I feel like that stuff's overused, and I'm guessing that if you're watching this video, you're not looking to just throw orcs and goblins and kobolds in because that's boring. Try to find something that could be different or interesting. And again, think about the level of your party and the challenge rating that you want to throw at them. If they're a high-level party, maybe you're throwing mind flayers at them, or Gith Yankee or Gith Zerai. I don't know. I don't use that stuff. But you could do things like that. You could throw challenges at them that are of a higher level. Or maybe you like giants. So maybe you have a bunch of giants that are the actual opposition. Or minotaurs, that kind of thing, if you wanted to stick with the mythical element that we have here with the Acephali. Whatever you choose, that faction should be the strongest part of this adventure, of this dungeon crawl. And initially, maybe the exposure to them is a small quantity. So what this does is it gives the party a sense of overconfidence, right? If you throw, let's just say minotaurs, right? You're gonna have minotaurs be the faction. You throw like 2 minotaurs at a party of 5 or 6 players with NPC helpers, maybe if they haven't died, and they'll probably defeat the minotaurs pretty easily. So they'll be like self-confident, but then you have other minotaurs and minions who serve the minotaurs in this faction. And those encounters, those people are guarding their stronghold. So the party is really infiltrating another faction's stronghold. That stronghold should have defenses. It should have minions. It should have the primary faction members, right? And maybe some of them are scaled differently. So maybe you have like a group of 4 minotaurs in the second or third encounter within this part, and they have their standard listed weapons and maybe a basic armor class. But then you have a boss minotaur who is going to come out with whatever, full plate and a +1 great axe or something, or +2 great axe, whatever it is. Just try to scale it so that it's challenging enough to the party that somebody might die, especially if the players make stupid mistakes. But if they're strategic and they're smart, they should be able to defeat this encounter in combat. What do you do for the big bad end boss? Now, this is fun. you could follow what the crumbs that you've been leading for the players, right? If you've, eventually revealed that the Minotaurs, and you don't even have to use that name, like the Acephali could refer to the Minotaurs as some other name, right? The horned ones. And maybe the horned ones give the impression that like the party's not sure what these are. Like, are they demons? Are they, But you've revealed that the Minotaurs are in fact the faction through multiple encounters and clues that you've dropped. But maybe the big bad end guy, the boss of this whole faction, the one who took the holy item, relic, or artifact from the Acephali in the first place and is now using it for malicious intent, maybe that big bad end guy is a spellcasting demon of some kind. Or if that's too powerful, say that this is a low-level, adventure. Maybe that person is something else. Not that you couldn't scale down a demon, but the idea is that maybe that person is something else that's not what you would have thought, or that the party would have thought. Like, in other words, not a Minotaur. Maybe the actual leader of this faction is not a Minotaur. Or you flip the script and you make it something almost Wizard of Oz-ish, right? Where maybe in the room where the artifact is found, there are statues that are animated, suits of armor or animated statues, or even like if it's mid-level, maybe some kind of golem, like a stone golem. And you have the actual boss be like a halfling wizard, just as an example. Something that the party would never think would be the one behind the Minotaur faction, but it's a halfling wizard or a kobold wizard, something completely non-threatening, but has the illusionary power or mechanical, contraptions that make him seem more fierce. And if you don't want to go with magic, it doesn't have to be a wizard. It could be, literally just some unassuming person, right, who has convinced the Minotaurs that he is more powerful than he is, vis-a-vis the Wizard of Oz, who is really good with mechanical stuff and has created all these like contraptions and like spinning blades and saws and these loud death whistles that scream out and terrify people and terrify the Minotaurs. And really behind the curtain is just some person who is a charlatan, right? So you could flip the script in that direction. Or just make him like a demon, like I said, or a big badass Minotaur shaman with magic and armor and weapons. The choice is yours. But ultimately, when the party's gone through all this and they are able to defeat this enemy, however they do it, even if it's through social, diplomatic negotiation, intimidation, whatever it is, and they recover, the object, the totem, the magical artifact that the Acephali need, they return to the Acephali as the heroes, much like Indiana Jones did at the end of Temple of Doom with the stones that make everyone able to live and provide water, right? So just a simple idea, right? Based on one monster in a book and one mythical headless men idea. But that could be probably 5 or 6 gaming sessions if you wanted it to be. And it's so much more fulfilling when you take a monster and you integrate the monster into encounters and adventures, and then maybe later in the campaign at higher level, the party discovers that they need something from the island and they have to return to their old friends and allies, the Acephali, and ask them for their help. I don't know, just throwing some ideas out there. Hopefully, you have found this episode of Monster Monday to be informative, helpful, and perhaps even entertaining. Thanks as always to my patrons on Patreon and all of my subscribers for your support. You all mean the world to me, and I hope to see you next time on Monster Monday. Peace and happy gaming.
Well, hello, and welcome to Bill Allen World. I am Wizzy, the Wizard, I'm back once again to remind you to subscribe and click on the notifications button, and also watch videos that are over there. Tune in to the next episode of whatever show you were just watching and watch other shows featuring Bill. He made me say that because he's a narcissist. Okay, bye.